circumstances. And you got to give him a lot of credit for being resilient. I got a good feeling about this one, though, this last shot.
It is Finney Smith who will take the ball out of bounds. Dallas out of timeouts. 1.5 left. They need a basket to win the game. Booker just put Phoenix in front. Now Lucas Prayer is off the rim, and the game is over. And Phoenix has swept Dallas in 2 straight at American Airlines Center and in 3 games this year.
Despite the fact that their dreams may differ, all athletes can agree on what their worst nightmare is: losing. It could be in the hands of an unstoppable competitor, an unfortunate fumble, or a gut-wrenching injury that made it so an athlete's future became a dream tarnished by jeopardy. But its existence is undoubtedly the worst thing an athlete could imagine for themselves, because, well, it encapsulates the very antithesis of what athletes dream of doing.
His determination and desire and drive is second to none. Just the desire and the will to win.
I told you, all of my critics, I told you all that I was the greatest of all time when I beat Sonny Liston.
The confidence I have when I'm out there is different. No matter how far you think you're ahead of me, I'm going to catch you. That's my mentality that I go out there with.
Although athletes are valued and known for their tremendous physical gifts and unbelievable skill in their respective sports, the mental edge athletes require is an underrated but necessary part of the repertoire to compensate and push through for their losses, their downtime, and moments of hardship that can define careers. Athletes not only have to strengthen their bodies, but have to strengthen their mind to retain a sharp focus and confidence even when it gets hard. This well-known fact led to the establishment of sports psychology, a study of how certain psychological factors can influence athletic performance for athletes and people alike. Research in sports psychology can date back as early as the late 19th century, where significant developments were made, such as from psychologist Norman Triplett's discovery in 1898 that cyclists who rode with others typically performed better due to the social and competitive factors that were included in group activities. In 1925, Coleman Griffith founded the first American sports psychology laboratory in the University of Illinois, where an unfortunate lack of funding shuttered the lab in 1932. Other major developments included the work of psychology graduate student B.C. Graves, Professor Walter Miles, Ph.D., and college football coach Glenn Pop Warner, who helped bring about one of the first sports psychology experiments to find the fastest possible way for a football offense to move in unison. For the experiment to be possible, Miles created his own experimental equipment, a chronoscope, to record the reaction times of football players. The device could record the reaction times of 7 linemen simultaneously, and its recordings interested coaches in their goal to quicken how an offense moved. Looking back on it, the initiative of Miles and Graves helped push the envelope for a key aspect of what sports psychology is today, using psychological insights and experiments to help gain possible advantages and edges over opponents. To this day, sports psychology has become an important applied field of athletics and has importance in all sports.
So, to you, what is sports psychology and how important is it for athletes to apply it in their lives?
Okay, I think sports psychology is definitely one of the most underrepresented field in the psychology community. Yeah. And then I feel like sports psychology is equally important as other fields in psychology, since it do helps a lot of athletes, and I feel like for athletes they are not technically they are not machines, so of course like they need some human support in order to pursue their sports career.
So there's a slight stigma, I think, in the sports world about athletes actually reaching out and talking about their problems, right?
I'm not aware about how things work especially in abroad, yeah. But from what I know, especially like in developed countries and in countries where athletes are very much supported by the government, they are more likely to excel in what they are doing, and then probably less stress in what they are doing as well. But in Indonesia, like sport is not exactly supported by the government or probably even by the society itself. So I would say that it's still like less developed as compared to sport psychology probably in other countries.
Sports psychology is known as a broad field because of how different people have different approaches to applying it. However, to understand how it can be used for the advantage of athletes, it can be focused and applied in a more funneled perspective. This is where the 6 dimensions of wellness come in, specifically from the National Wellness Institute. Occupational, physical, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, and social wellness are each seen as a vital aspect to maintain lives that have a sense of true wellness and fulfillment. Understanding each of these dimensions and how they can be maintained in a healthy way to empower athletes is important to not only encourage a balanced and healthy life, but it can help funnel sports psychology, which is a very broad field, into focused and structured steps and areas of application. Athletes are meant to be soldiers out in the field, cool, collected, and completely focused on dominating the competition and performing their best. This mindset has led to the success of many athletes and has even been the cornerstone to their success, including athletes with traits such as supreme confidence, unrivaled intensity, or as most athletes are boiled down to, people who are obsessed with winning. However, in some cases, the expectation to be tough and hide or even let out emotions in unhealthy ways both on and off the field is very common. These unhealthy outlets can ruin lives or cause issues related to mental health, which combined with the stress and pressure that comes with performing well in sports can lead to more harm than good for athletes. A person's emotion in relation to stress and pressure is one of the most common catalysts for mental and emotional breaks. One such case of this happening to an athlete is when boxer Oliver McCall suffered a mental breakdown in a match with Lennox Lewis. The fight, which happened on February 8, 1997, lasted 5 rounds, the last of which McCall seemed to have given up on, throwing barely any punches, looking defeated, and even crying before the round started. McCall was an impressive fighter that was never knocked down in the entirety of his career, but later issues with drug abuse related to stress found itself to be the focus of his match with Lennox Lewis. Although not under the influence at the time, it could be debated that his withdrawal gave enough pressure to cause McCall to have mental instability. Beverly Hills clinical psychiatrist Mark Schatz later noted that McCall suffered an emotional breakdown, one where he fell into a dissociative state, as if he were detached and not even in the ring at all, which explains his lack of motivation to continue fighting. McCall was not in the mental state to fight, and an awareness of his limitations and emotional problems beforehand could have saved him the pain of experiencing this breakdown in the ring. McCall's tragic story provides an important lesson in how emotional well-being can impact how athletes perform. Athletes, like mentioned before, are expected to be tough and ride through even their worst performances, but it's also important to provide help to those who seek it and treat problems that can cause an unstable state, as triggers can just as easily push those that are unstable over the edge and cause a breakdown, much like how it did with McCall. Athletes have to be strong enough to be aware what their emotional needs are and what issues have to be sorted out in order for them to be motivated and to be their best selves in the field and perform. In close matches with competitors that are physically even, the one with the strongest will and control over their emotions is the one who will always succeed. So athletes have to understand their issues and, more importantly, how to control their emotions to succeed. This can be done in an array of ways that athletes have shown in the past, culminating in things like pre-game routines, which not only prepare the body physically, but makes the athlete feel comfortable, calm, and in control, to other ventures like meditation and other practices. The main takeaway for athletes is to know your limits, emotional needs, and try to work around said needs in means that an athlete would be comfortable with, such as professional help or outlets and hobbies outside of their sport. From there, athletes that think they are ready mentally just have to focus on their sport and find something that can motivate them and give them energy to succeed, which can be from dedicating a lot of time with their sport and building confidence to the smallest adjustments to make an athlete feel comfortable and ready. It depends on the athlete, so they have to know what they need and work around that. At the end of the day, an athlete is driven by their emotions, so controlling those is key to controlling how an athlete performs. This may be difficult to maintain and differs in terms of conditions for different athletes, but occupational wellness is still a pivotal part of an athlete's life. Whether younger, aspiring athletes choose a different career path for whatever reason, or are forced to walk away from their sport for a significant amount of time, it's important to choose an occupation that aligns with personal values, interests, and beliefs through a means that's personally rewarding and can help develop skills. However, for athletes that choose their sport as their means of occupation, it's still important for athletes to recognize that they're in the right field and are willing to push through challenges, which especially rings true with athletes that showed potential at young ages and were expected to take it to the pros, such as all-time great athletes like LeBron James, who started as a high school basketball phenom, and Tiger Woods, one of the greatest golfers of all time, who started playing golf at the ripe age of 2. Even so, maintaining occupational wellness in whatever sport they're in still has the same standards as any other job, and aspects like developing skills and rewarding milestones should also be maintained for healthy occupational wellness. Finally, it's also important in this sense for a good work-life balance to be put in place. Although athletes require dedication and a lot of time with their sport, life outside of being an athlete is just as important as life within that mold, something many athletes did with their ventures outside of sports. Most importantly, spending time with family and interests outside of sports, the last of which can give athletes breathing room and space away from their sport when it feels like too much. Understanding these can help empower athletes by reminding them that they are much more than their performances and statistics on the field, and that there are other things in life that are just as important as their sport that they can fall back on and enjoy. On a physical standpoint, taking these breaks can give the body appropriate rest and time to recuperate, but on a mental standpoint, being able to enjoy other areas of life may decrease stress related to the athlete's sport and help managing other parts of life less heavy on athletes in general. Keeping all of this in mind is important when recognizing an athlete is something a person is, but definitely should not be a person's entire life, much like how a person's occupation isn't their whole identity. This is arguably the most straightforward dimension of well-being for athletes to manage. Athletes participate in physical activities naturally as part of their passion for their respective sports and find it natural in their drive and aim to be the best, to manage their bodies, and get stronger. This also applies to a healthy diet and adequate amount of sleep. The most elite athletes from every level understand the importance of these two things to make sure performance is at its highest. The value of knowing a body's needs and maintaining good physical wellness is an ingrained lesson in every athlete as a necessary part for them to be their best. On the mental side, if athletes can get enough rest and energy required for their sport, they're bound to perform better, especially if they feel that they're strong or energized to bring their best on the field, which only comes from maintaining appropriate exercise and skill work with their sport, and adequate rest and diet to make sure not too much is being exerted from an athlete's body. Athletes are famous, really famous. Their abilities in their respective sports easily attract attention from others, and naturally their status as athletes and celebrities provide them the benefit of constantly interacting with others and being under the public eye, either being praised for their choices and achievements, or scrutinized and compared to other greats in their sports. This provides an added pressure to an already difficult standard to meet, the standard of success. The stress and pressure involved with performing in front of crowded stadiums, and in some cases your very own friends and family, can stretch an athlete dry if they feel that their efforts and abilities in their sport are not as expected. In those situations, social support is an important cornerstone for athletes to persevere, whether it be support from family, friends, or simply those an athlete can turn to in times of crisis. This social support can give athletes a bigger picture on their failures and encourage a positive self-image encouraged by others. Due to this, having social support through good social well-being can help athletes navigate the consequences of adversity in their sports and its impact on their mental health. To add on to this, good social support can also keep athletes grounded and down to earth. On the field, good social support is a given for athletes to participate in team sports. Fantastic team chemistry is important to ensure success in sports that gather a collection of athletes, which comes from good social ties with your teammates, having aligned goals for success, and knowing how each athlete can contribute to make the team its most dangerous. A team, above all else, is a group of people who share a passion and want to work towards a goal, and working towards that goal will be at its smoothest if everyone is comfortable working together and is aware of their roles and how their teammates function, which comes from good team chemistry. Stephen Curry, a now 4-time NBA champion, once noted that with chemistry, it's knowing who's going to be where, who might be open, and assess that risk in the moment to make the right decision. If Curry shows anything, it's that all-time great players are also attached to all-time great teams that can work around their gravity and greatness, which is as good a lesson on the importance of the team in team sports as any. To extend on the metaphor mentioned previously, athletes are not just soldiers, but in most cases tacticians, and have to learn how to play their game on consistently high levels. This has been shown time and time again as an important edge that athletes can always use to even the playing field, or in other words, gain true understanding of their sport and strategies to get ahead. This has been shown by athletes that often use their intelligence and read of the sport to gain success, like Chris Paul, an NBA veteran who has a fantastic ability to read the floor and exploit defenses, which only comes from training his mind through understanding his sport at a deeper level, for Hall of Fame wide receiver Pat McAnally, the only NFL player to score a perfect score on the Wonderlic test, a test used to measure the problem-solving and cognitive abilities of their players. All of this can only become achievable for aspiring athletes if they can encourage good intellectual wellness in themselves. Intellectual wellness in general refers to the willingness to grow in terms of learning new things, always striving to be creative, and to overall be exposed to experiences that can help develop these traits. This comes from always trying to keep open-minded when learning new things, practicing how to solve problems, and more trivial but helpful areas that can help sharpen intelligence like good verbal skills, continued knowledge of social and political issues, and absorbing information from sources like books, newspapers, and even magazines. Keeping all of this in mind and keeping the mind engaged in an athlete's life off the field is not only beneficial for an athlete's well-being and intellect, but can also correlate to performance on the field. Although sports IQ, or an athlete's ability to read their sport, only comes from dedicating a lot of time and attention to detail in training and studying the game, in a broader sense, helping a person develop good intellectual wellness will allow them to learn new things in more efficient ways and train their brain to be sharp in an array of ways and situations, which provides athletes a good base to increase their sports intelligence and understanding overall, which does wonders for confidence and performance. This is usually in strong connection to religion and relates to finding systems of support and ways to bring comfort and feel peaceful. A well-known example of how spiritual practices and beliefs were connected to the sports world is how NBA coach Phil Jackson taught his players. Known as the Zen Master, he got his nickname because of how he coaches and sees life, which strongly involves spiritual practices like meditation and a focused state of mind. Spiritual practices in the league today still have their hold, and 2 seasons ago alone, during the bubble, a time when NBA players were forced to self-isolate themselves and play in empty stadiums due to the pandemic, NBA player LeBron James dedicated regular meditation in the middle of games. As he noted in an interview, meditating helps a lot for me personally with taking a lot of deep breaths, closing my eyes, and just centering myself and listening to my inner self. That definitely is something that keeps me sane in the bubble. James still practices meditation to this day, most recently in a Lakers game versus the Utah Jazz on February 17th, where he did so in the middle of a game. Spiritual practices such as meditation are noted to help calm and recenter a person's mind to become mindful or present and alert during games. Athletes from all levels can maintain their spiritual wellness in an array of ways, and it doesn't have to be in big, time-consuming practices, as the smallest practice can bring comfort and provide better lifestyle habits. These practices include, but are not limited to, short meditations and prayers, walking in a purposeful and conscious way to clear the mind and reflect, reading books related to spirituality, and connecting to communities that have spirituality as its focus, and even gratitude journals or a place where an athlete can reflect on the good things and people in life to harness gratitude and remind athletes to focus on the positives of their life as opposed to negative emotions like greed, anger, or envy. These practices may be seen as cliche or not very beneficial for those who don't believe in spiritual practices, but including it in an athlete's life may align them to be more productive, increase their focus in their sport, and quiet the mind to allow it to be more flexible and peaceful even under the stress and pressure of sports, especially those in the professional setting. As a conclusion, it's important to highlight the fact that athletes, although often portrayed as heroes and the very best in their fields, are human. They could struggle, accumulate injuries that completely change the trajectory of their lives, and occasionally get trapped in the stress and pressure of performing in their sport. Due to this, it's also important to remember that athletes have needs both mentally and physically, and each is individually unique in those needs. No matter how different a person's needs may be compared to the next person, everyone deserves the right to have those needs met, especially when it relates to mental health. Furthermore, an athlete addressing these needs and issues shouldn't be stigmatized, and it can lead to very serious issues if left unaddressed. An athlete achieves greatness through their failures and building themselves to be the best versions of themselves, which is as true on the field as it is off it. Thank you for listening.